This episode is part of a special series of fireside chats that Tony and Sage Robbins created just for the holiday season to share key messages of support during this unique time. To watch the video of this episode, go to tonyrobbins.com/holiday and check back there and here on the podcast for future episodes coming soon.
Hello there, everyone. It's Sage and Tony.
Nice to see you all. Listen, we want to be a blessing to you in this season during a time of such uncertainty. And we just thought we'd share from our experience what's been happening and find out if there's some ways in which you can take this time that we have here, this COVID time, this time of uncertainty and fear and a lot of frustration and anger, and see if we can't convert it into something that's helpful for you.
Yes, definitely. And just from our home and hearts to yours, you know, we've all been navigating such a unique time of life. And for our own selves, individually and collectively, there's just been such a tremendous amount of growth and insight and just learnings through this time. And so that we thought that we'd share some of our own experience.
So, you know, it's kind of like a fireside chat. You know, the last time our country was in this kind of shape was probably in the 30s and 40s, and we had an amazing leader then called FDR, who had these fireside chats. 90% of the country had a radio at that time. Today, you know, 96% of people have a cell phone, and instead of being unified and watching all the same things and having a collective experience, now we're all kind of separated. And we can see it in the division in our culture. And then, of course, now with that fear and that uncertainty, it's being magnified by social media without bad intent. But if you've seen, you know, something like The Social Dilemma, or if you've read any of the books about what actually happens today, social media actually reinforces us to believe the things we already believe and to kind of demonize the opposite, because the longer they keep us online, the more money that's being made. And so we thought, you know, maybe we can punch through together and just take a few minutes and consider some simple things that could perhaps help us get rid of some of the pain, because we're desperately needing some form of unity, some form of connection, so much more humanity, some kindness in the world. And so we thought maybe our conversation, maybe we have a couple real brief conversations with you, and hopefully they'll be helpful for you. They've been helpful for us and for our family as well. I think a way to think about this is that everyone's brought to their knees by COVID, right? Unless you're selling toilet paper or you're Amazon, you probably have had a pretty rough time there. I don't care who you are. And, you know, we have kids that are at home. We're trying to take care of our kids and be teachers and run our lives. And many of us have been separated from our mission and our work in some ways. We're in a place where, you know, if we have family, which we do, that are in their 70s or 80s, very often what happens is those people have been separated out and we can't even be next to them or connect to them. It's a wild time. Never did we ever dream in a million years back in February. We were all together. We had my wife produced an unbelievable 60th birthday party, and we used it to really serve and raised, at the time, $19 million for Underground Railroad. And so, you know, we were in this flow about to do our big event as usual, and somebody called me up, and I couldn't even believe it. They said, are you going to cancel the Unleash the Power of Then event in San Francisco, which is like 5 days later? And I said, are you kidding me? I've never canceled an event. Last year, I had mercury poisoning. They rushed me to the hospital, and I told the doctor, I'm leaving the hospital. I got to finish the seminar, and I did it in a wheelchair. So who could have guessed that the government around the world would suddenly stop us from being able to connect? And so it's had an effect on everybody. And the effect has been deeper than just COVID. I don't know if you've seen, but the United Nations is now talking about there's a doubling of hunger around the world. There's 250 million people that will likely die of hunger, because there are many countries that they rely upon tourism for 50, 60, 70, some of them 80% of the money. They don't have money for food. In our own country, the lockdowns have had an impact. And that impact is not just the separation of us and the fear that's happened there, but right now we're seeing people all over the world, all of the United States at least, turning to drugs and alcohol like never before. The overdoses in Oregon just in the first few months were up 70% from drug overdoses, to give you perspective, or, you know, an unbelievable number of people with opioid overuse once again. I read in Journal of American Medical Association, USA Today, did an article on it showing that women today are binge drinking 41% more than they ever have to try to cope with things. And then, to me, the scariest one of all, maybe, or at least up there with the hunger, is 1 out of 4 young people, again, according to the CDC, has considered suicide in the last 3 months. What that says is we don't have a compelling future. You know, when things are great, people think they're going to be great forever and they don't prepare. And when things are bad, human beings think it's going to be bad forever, and it's just not true. Life is cyclical, and history is cyclical if you study it. You know, what always follows the night, thank God, is the daytime, right? What follows, you know, winter is a spring, and we're in winter, and it's not going to just disappear. So I thought maybe we could plant some seeds about the process, because anytime we go through loss, you know, a death, or a family issue, or maybe loss of a job or career, we're all going to experience extreme stress in our life. Nobody escapes it. I don't care how smart you are, how heartfelt you are, how spiritual you are, how much money you have, how intelligent you think you are. We all are going to experience this extreme stress outside of COVID. It's going to happen in our lives. We're going to have family members that are diagnosed, with a debilitating disease, or in some cases, telling them that they're terminal. We're going to have experiences of losing jobs. We're going to of losing businesses. We're going to have all these things happen. We're going to have crimes that occur. So aren't you glad you tuned into this happy moment? But what I want to get is, when we go through those times, if we can make it through them, and we can, three things happen. Number one, you start to realize when you experience severe stress and you push through it, you begin to realize how strong you really are. And that is something you take into the next year, or the next decade, the next stage of your life, and it makes everything richer, where you can help others and help yourself. And if you can push through those incredibly tough times, the other thing that you discover is who are your real friends. Because, when it's the tough times, you get to see who sticks around and who takes off, who's there to support, who's just into themselves. And then third thing that you learn when you go through extreme stress is you really start to develop almost like a protection. It's like people I know, I have a friend that was in Vietnam, decades and decades ago, was locked in a Vietnamese prison where he was abused over and over again, tied to the ground, beat for 7 years. When he came back, nothing bothers him now. So the IRS is coming after him. I'll give you your best shot. If the North Korean and the Vietnamese can't get me, then you're not going to be able to get it. So there's a power in going through stress. And the goal is to learn how to use stress instead of let stress use you. And so one way to help you do that is, I'm sure you've heard that when people go through major loss, there's kind of a pattern, like, say, the loss of death, loss of a business, loss of anything. And the first stage almost always is that stage of, like, shock. Like, what came to us is like, suddenly we can't help people the time they need us most. And every country started shutting us down, all over the United States, and Moscow and London and Sydney, Australia, and Amsterdam, down in Peru. Suddenly everything was canceled. And the first response was just shock. Like, this can't be. And then the second stage we tend to go through after the shock wears off is, this anger or frustration, like, not like it's impossible. It's not just shock. It can't be. There's this feeling inside of us that it's not right. It's not fair. And of course, life isn't fair all the time, obviously. It can be more than fair at times.